Okay, I want to introduce you to Wolf. Here he is. Say hello to Wolf, everyone. Now he is a zombie reborn doll. And check out the way that he's made. And check out all the veins. The way the hands are formed. Even the feet. Now how cool is that? Now Wolf's got this really lovely energy. And he is spirited. And we're very lucky to actually get him. He has a spirit of a young teenager boy with him who was born with a deformity, and he was shunned by his peers because of his deformity, and so he felt very muchly unloved. And when he arrived, that's the feeling that we got, that he was very muchly unloved. Now we don't know the full story yet, we're still working on it, but this is what we're getting so far, and he's actually a really lovely energy. Now reborns are an amazing thing, and Beth's the one to have a bit of a chat about reborn dolls. This is an alternative reborn doll, really well made, and they make all sorts of different alternative reborn dolls as well as the standard reborn dolls. But I'll hand you over to Beth and she can have a bit of a chat about reborn dolls. So this is these are three of our alternative reborn dolls. We've got Ank over here, Wolf, and we have Magic, as in monkey magic. They are reborn dolls, fair income reborn dolls, but they are the alternative kind. Okay, Beth is also holding Cam, who is a standard reborn doll. He's our little old man.
He looks like a little old man.
He looks like a little old man. Looks like a little Buddha.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. All up, Beth's got 8 reborn dolls and 250 other dolls. A lot of them spirited. A lot with residual energy as well. Okay, so I suppose first question would be, what's a reborn doll?
A reborn doll is a doll that is made by an artist. They're not store-bought dolls. They're made by individual artists. They're handmade dolls that are... The traditional reborns are made to look like real children, and they're made to be as lifeful, have as much lifelike as possible. They started off in probably the late 90s, before, roughly, I think, you might have to check that. Before there were the baby dolls, the reborn dolls, there were porcelain dolls that people would make to look, hand make to look like real baby dolls, and I have a few of them in the dolly room. But reborns started to kick off as a therapy doll. So reborns they originally were dolls that were used for therapeutic purposes. They were usually used for elderly with dementia, or people with Down syndrome or autism, to help them learn how to interact with people, but more important, give them that one person in the world that doesn't judge them. So for dementia, it was a calming thing, because there's nothing more calming than sitting with a baby on your lap, and a lot of dementia patients would calm when they were given one of the dolls. And it's the same with kids with autism or Down syndrome or ADHD or anxiety or depression. Even now, reborns are used as therapy dolls. I have a therapy doll, and you've probably seen Amber on my page. She's a toddler doll. She's also spirited, but she's my therapy doll, because when I lost Cruiser, I kind of lost the plot a little bit, and I needed to find a way to leave the house without feeling anxious.
And a lot of people too, we've been finding, have been using the Reborn dolls, of people who have lost children,
Yeah.
had
Well, that's why
miscarriages or lost a child.
that's where Cameron came into it, because I actually bought Cam to help me help me deal with the, not get over it, but help me deal with the grief of losing our daughter Rhiannon, who we lost in March 2018.
And the dolls are generally quite weighted too, aren't they?
Yeah, they're weighted to feel like you're holding a real child. The weight varies. I've got dolls, I got 10 because I didn't count Dee Dee. I forgot Dee Dee.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. they're various weights. So I've got one that is very, very heavy, and she's very floppy, and she looks very lifelike. That's Sky. She looks like she moves, she flops around like a real baby doll. She's very heavy. Amber's a bit of a heifer. She's quite heavy. Cam's not as heavy. There's also, with Reborns, there's also what they call cuddle babies. So there's ones that are designed for children so that they can basically hug them and stuff, and that's what Ank is. Ank's actually a cuddle baby. His face is painted, but his hands and his feet and his body is all soft. Do you want to pass it?
And what are they generally made of?
The Reborns are generally made from, they're either made from silicone or vinyl. This is Ank. I'll give you Cam. You can see him over there. Cause
Come on, mate.
So this is Ank, and as you can see, he's got a material body. So his hands and his arms and even his feet and his legs are all one material body, whereas his little face, he's a silicone reborn because he's squishy. So the silicone reborns are squishy, and they actually have weighted beads in their heads and their limbs. So this is little Ank. He's a he's got an interesting spirit attached to him.
He's an alternative one.
He's my alternative. He's my little interdimensional traveller. His eyes go right. He just looks into your soul, Ank.
And well, not all dolls are spirited, but sometimes you're lucky enough to get a doll that is spirited. How does a doll or a reborn doll become spirited?
I don't buy dolls that don't have anything attached to them. That's the
It's
long and
just,
the short of it.
Being mediums,
Yeah.
you're just attracted to something for a reason, and you know, being mediums, you're connecting to spirit all the time. And generally, when we're buying or when Beth is buying something like this, she has that connection. Even through a photo, she can tell if something is spirited, and she really doesn't buy anything that's not spirited.
For me, it's in the eyes. I usually pick up the spirit in the eyes of the doll. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul. I don't like the factory mass-produced porcelain dolls that you see around, because to me a lot of the time the eyes are empty, which means there's nothing behind it. And I actually find it more unnerving having a doll whose eyes are empty than I do having one where there's someone there. Because to me it's not natural. Because I got into this habit of naming things when I was a kid. So naming inanimate objects. And it was a habit I got into from my grandmother, because my grandmother used to name everything. Every single ornament on her mantelpiece had a name. It had a story. It had, you know, who that, you know, there was a little old man that was on my grandma's mantelpiece, and she used to say, oh, he's waiting for his wife. She hasn't come to get him yet. Or we had a rocking horse when I was a kid, and my grandmother named the rocking horse Dobbin. So my grandmother would name everything, every little inanimate object. The washing machine's name at my grandmother's place was Barry. I have no idea why she called the washing machine Barry, but she did.
With the dolls, we did an investigation quite a while back where the guy had actually implanted his sister's hair and ashes into the doll, and that brought a connection to the spirit, so the doll became spirited with his sister. But generally that's not the case.
We've got one like that.
In a lot of cases, we find that spirit are attracted to a doll. Perhaps they own the doll, and they had a love for the doll, they had an emotional connection to the doll, and if the spirit has stayed earthbound, it has stayed around the doll and stayed connected to the doll. But there are other circumstances, I suppose.
With the reborns, I often find that the spirits choose the doll. They may not necessarily have owned the doll, loved the doll. If the spirit's lost, I find the spirit chooses the doll for whatever reason.
Because they have like an affinity to dolls. They probably had dolls in their life or something. And
it could be that the doll looks like them. Cameron's a good example of that. Cameron's got 3 spirit attached to him. Do you want to swap over?
No, it's okay.
Cam has...
Quickly go down this.
Cam has 3 spirits attached to him. I bought Cam, like I said, to help me deal with the grief of losing a child. So that's what the purpose was, and I bought him off a lovely lady, a beautiful artist, and she had him as a therapy doll. She had him marked as a therapy doll.
Hey, Cam.
Now, Cam, I felt something with Cam. I felt a connection with Cam, but I didn't know what it was. And he was the first one. He was my first reborn I bought. And when Cameron arrived, I completely emotionally lost it. I opened the box. I was in tears opening the box. I unwrapped him. I checked out his little feet. I checked out his little hands. And then I unwrapped his head. And I was all right until I picked him up, and then I completely lost it, and I cried. Rick didn't know what to do. I was bawling my eyes out, and it was because I hadn't picked up I hadn't felt the weight of a baby since my daughter was little, and my daughter's now 17. So Cam has a very healing energy connected to him, and that is the energy that I know as Cameron. And when I bought Cam, the lady said, oh, you know, if you want to change his name, that's fine. And because he's got a little bracelet on with his name on it. I said, no, Cameron suits him. It's a good, my guides were saying it's a good Scottish name. So my guides are all, my main guide's Scottish.
So with Cameron, the spirit Cameron actually had an affinity to the doll for some reason.
It looks like him.
And yeah.
I find that the reborns, the spirit, it looks like the spirit looks like the doll. The spirit finds something in the doll that kind of reminds them of themselves.
Yeah, that they resonate with, yeah.
Then there's another spirit connected to Cameron, and that's a spirit I know as Phoenix. And he's a young boy who's been following me around since I was a kid.
So it's possible to have a couple of spirits connected to the doll because they emotionally like the doll. That are lost souls that are roaming around, they sometimes find a house and the people in it that they feel comfortable with, and they find something within the house that they feel an affinity with, that they resonate with, and if it happens to be dolls, they might actually connect to a doll.
I never have an empty vessel for too long. If I do I have people give me dolls. I have people who don't want their dolls to go to charity shops. They want them to go somewhere where they love, so they will give me dolls.
So we've had people who have said, listen, we don't like the energy of this doll, can you have it?
Yeah, I've had Beryl's a good example of that. I've had people send me dolls. I had a lady send me dolls from America last year because her husband had an issue with them. I don't have empty vessels for too long. Cameron, the other spirit, the third spirit that's connected to Cam, is a little boy named Peter.
Now Peter's an interesting story because Peter I actually met at the hospital I work at, and how I met him was one night I was standing on the balcony at work having a cigarette in an open area, and I sort of had my foot out, well, 1 foot out backwards, and I felt somebody kicking my ankle, and you know, just giving it a bit of a gentle push and a play. And I thought, oh yeah, okay, I've got a little spirit here that's playing around. And I walked back to the table to grab another cigarette, and I found my cigarette packet, and I had the lighter on top of it, on the ground, with the lighter on top of it. There was no wind, no nothing that could ever pushed it off. But how can you have a cigarette lighter on a table with a lighter on it, cigarette packet with a lighter on it, and then find it on the ground with the lighter exactly on top of the cigarette packet?
The reason Peter came home was I ended up in hospital I had to have a hysterectomy. I had major surgery, and they put me in the maternity ward, which is the worst place to put a woman who can't have any more children, because you can hear all the babies crying, and that doesn't, you know, that automatically kicks in when you're asleep. You know, baby cries, you wake up. Anyway, Peter was watching me. He was in the room with me, and I had Cruiser with me. And there was another spirit that kept coming in that wasn't very nice, and because I was really ill, I couldn't sense that it was there. And Peter was keeping it away. Anyway, he couldn't work out why I didn't have a baby to bring home, because all the other mothers had a baby to bring home, and he couldn't work out why there wasn't a baby. I didn't have a baby. So he followed me home. And the first thing I did when I got out of hospital and I came home was I picked up Cam. And at the time, Cam was the only reborn doll I had. And I put him back down and I left the room, and I had a cat ball with Cam, because I always had a cat ball in the dolly corner. It was a corner there, it's now a room. And I walked past it and the cat ball lit up. And after having quite a few late night conversations while I was recovering from surgery in the middle of the pandemic, we discovered it was Peter. So Peter passed away during the Spanish flu epidemic, and he'd been hanging around the hospital pretty much causing mischief from then on. But Peter doesn't stay here. Peter, we have a portal that goes from our place to the hospital, and the only person who can use it is Peter, because he's connected to Cam. So Peter comes backwards and forwards.
So you can actually have more than one spirit connected to a doll,
yeah,
which is really cool.
Cam's got 3. Mind you, Phoenix doesn't really say much. He doesn't really come forward, but he's there. Sky's got 1, and she didn't have one when she turned up. She had residual energy. I put her next to Ank, and one that Ank knew attached itself to Sky. So I put Ank next to Sky, and I was talking to a friend on Messenger one morning when Ank arrived, and we called him Ank because he has a very spiritual sort of vibe to him, a very out of this world vibe to him, and he's actually got Rick's Ank around his neck. And we took a few of the dolls to an expo, and they did readings, and Ank was one of the ones that came and helped us do readings.
Yeah, and Ank lit up the cat balls quite a bit.
Yeah.
He was one that lit up the cat balls quite a bit while we were at the expo.
Yeah.
And everybody was wondering why the cat balls were lighting up.
Oh, because it was a paranormal and psychic expo.
Yes. So
Ank's got his little mohawk, but he's also got a little rat's tail down the back here. So
question is, why would you make a reborn doll look like a monkey?
This is magic.
And it's a fair income reborn doll.
This is magic. She's an alternative. I bought this little one when I was working. I'd taken a position up in a childcare centre, and I had a puppet that I used to take as well, which the kids loved. But I bought Magic because, like I said, sometimes the world's too hard for me and I need some kind of support, and I needed something that I could take to the childcare centre and still fit in with what I was doing. So
it's like animals can relate You know, kids relate to animals.
Yeah, no, she's very cute.
So they do make different type of animal reborn dolls.
They make orangutans.
Yep.
They make chimps.
Yep.
They make werewolves.
Cool.
They make cats. I've seen pigs. I've seen sloths. I've seen
people are really creative with
vampires.
these reborns.
I've seen little vampire and little ghost babies.
Yeah. People are very creative with these.
But they're all handmade, and that's the difference between these dolls and the ones you buy.
And they can seriously cost quite a bit of money.
Yeah. These are all handmade. That's the difference between these dolls and the ones you see, say, on Wish or Amazon, or I think you can get them on eBay. The ones for like $35, $40, $50. They're what they call knockoffs. And they're when a Chinese company, it's usually a company based in China, notices there's a particular type of reborn that's very popular, and they make an illegal copy and then they mass produce it, which doesn't do the artists any favours because it undercuts the work that they're doing.
We were talking at one stage how much it costs to make a reborn doll, and it can cost hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah. The majority of the ones I have are second hand, so I've bought them from a previous owner. I've got Cameron was from the artist. I've got Jocelyn, she was from the artist. Ryan and Dee Dee are from the same artist. They're from a lovely lady in Traralgon that I buy my reborns off. They're sort of therapy type dolls. But the problem you have is when people look at the reborns and say, well, I can buy this doll on Amazon for $50, or I can buy this one from the artist for, $300. But you do get what you pay for. I have one knockoff. I didn't realise she was a knockoff when I bought her, but she had to be here because the spirit connected to that little one is very special, and that's Moo. And she's a knockoff reborn that's been repainted by an artist who was learning. And
a spirit actually connected to that doll, and that's why Beth is connected to it, because she doesn't buy anything that she doesn't feel a spirit connection to it, or a residual energy connected to it.
Yeah, and Moo is a very special case. Moo is the spirit of a little girl that was very, very, very abused. So she needs to be here. She needs to be with us, and it's a fine line for me between buying the real deal and buying what the spirit are connected to. I've got Moo's probably the only. I've probably got two that. The second one would probably be Kanga. He's probably the artist again. Didn't know that he was a knockoff.
So say hi to Kanga out there if you're watching.
Yeah, I've got Kanga.
Got a doll named after you.
I got Kanga and I've got Rue. Rue's not out here. She's an alternative. Rue's a little fairy. I forgot to get Rue, but she doesn't go anywhere without a brother, so I'd have to bring both of them out. Rue's the other. She's a little fairy. She's got little pointy ears and she looks like a little. She's very cute. But that's a different story altogether.
Very quickly, Beth's brought out some of the mainstream reborn dolls, just so you can have a little bit of a quick look at the difference there.
So this is Jocelyn. Now she does have a spirit connected to her. I bought her when I was in amongst trying to work out what was going on. I bought one doll, which is the little fairy doll, which I haven't brought out because she's a little bit, her situation, she doesn't like being moved around. I bought a fairy doll and it had 3 spirit attached to it. So it had a little boy, a little girl and an elemental. When the doll arrived, I realized one of the human spirit needed a new vessel. They wanted their own vessel. and I thought it was the little girl. So I was drawn to this little girl. She's from an artist in South Australia, I think. And in the meantime, somewhere along the line, and I don't remember doing it, I ordered another doll. And it was a little boy, and it was a cuddle baby, like Hank. And we were due to go on holidays. And that doll was meant to arrive, and I could not leave the house until that doll arrived. And Rick's like, we've got to go, and I'm just telling him, I'm sorry, but I can't leave until I get this package. And he's kind of looking at me a bit weird, but he's like, oh, well, she does everything else crazy, we'll go with it. And the other doll that came was a male doll. And as soon as it came, I changed its clothes, I put it in with the little fairy, and we took off. And that was Kanga. So I've got Kanga and I've got Roo. And the reason I called them Kanga and Roo is because they were hanging out in a little kind of a carry sling thing, like two little joeys. So when this little lady arrived, I'm like, well, I don't know what's going on there. As soon as I got her out of the packaging, I discovered that she had a spirit attached, and it was that of a little girl who was born sleeping. So a little stillborn. And so that's why she had to come here. So in amongst trying to work out how to help 3 spirit, I accumulated another one who needed help, which can happen sometimes. The one I've got here, can you just... Oh, the reason she's dressed like she is, that's therapeutic for me, because that's actually how I saw my daughter Rhiannon when I was pregnant. So I decided to put her in the little tutu and stuff. Anyway, this is how real these dolls can get. This is Sky, and I'll turn her around in a minute. I bought Sky from a lady around here who had her, I don't know why she's got cruiser hair on, she hasn't been around in ages, who had her custom made for herself. And she's a high-end reborn, so this is one of the high-end before you get to the silicone reborns. So this is little Sky, and she, you can see her little eyes. She is very, very real. And I do take her on investigations to places where there's been a lot of kids passing away, because she prompts mothers and fathers and aunts and uncles and sisters and brothers to come and talk to us because they want to hold the baby. And she came to Cape Clear Cemetery with us. She came on the collaboration we did with Ghost Bitches. She was there with us. So was Cameron.
Beth.
Hi, Beth. As Cameron was with us too. And we had a spirit during that investigation who wanted to hold the baby. People
out there who are interested in buying reborn dolls, just stock standard reborn dolls, and there's a lot of people out there on sites. You can find them on Facebook, and
I would join a reborn group.
Yeah, there's reborn groups.
You can get them. You can buy reborns on eBay and on Marketplace. You've got to know what to look for. Like I said, I've only really had issue twice, and the reason I ended up buying the doll was because the doll was spirited. It had nothing to do with the fact that it was a reborn.
Yeah, it talk about spirited. There's a lot of people who want to try and buy a spirited doll. Now, with the spirited dolls, how do you know they're spirited?
Like I said,
how do you feel it? Do you sense it? Do you?
Like I said, for me, it's in the eyes. If you pick up a doll and you look it in the eye and you feel something, then there's something
sort of connection
there.
To it.
Yeah, there's something there.
If you feel sort of a connection to it.
Yeah. I've got dolls that, I've got one doll that looks like a fox. I've got another doll that looks like a rabbit. I've got one that looks like a cat. I've got porcelain dolls. I've got reborn dolls. I've got celluloid dolls. I've got vintage dolls. I've got antique dolls. For me, it's in the eyes.
And there's a lot of sellers out there who try to sell spirited dolls or haunted dolls on eBay or on Facebook or
Yeah.
some social media sites and stuff
Yeah.
like that. How do you know to trust them?
For
If
me,
you can't pick up that it's spirited or not, how do you trust them?
if the story or the bio they're giving you, do they give you a bio? Or do they just say, this is haunted? The only doll I've ever bought that was listed as haunted was one we bought on Facebook. And that's Lady Rose, and she's a porcelain doll. And it was on Facebook Marketplace, and the ad read, porcelain doll, soft body, good condition. Can't guarantee it's not possessed. That was the listing, and I just went, I can't go past that. So I sent the guy a message, and he explained to me why he thought the doll was possessed. And we went to pick it up, and at first we went to the wrong house, which was weird. And then we went to the right house, and I knocked on the door. The guy practically threw the doll at me, took the money and shut the door, and didn't want to have any more to do with her. And I'm looking at this doll, and she's a gorgeous little doll. And I said to the doll, what have you done? And all I heard was, I put them in their place. And it was a household of young guys who had bought a haunted doll on a whim, thinking, it wasn't real. And the spirit connected to it was an elderly lady who had been a teacher her whole life and didn't appreciate them using her as a party trick. No, they used to bring her out when everybody was drunk and try and get the doll to do something.
So things started happening in the house. They got a little bit scared and wanted to get rid of the doll really quick.
Yeah, that is the only doll I've ever bought that was classed as haunted. For me, if I personally, and this is my personal opinion, I don't believe in demonic dolls. I don't believe any doll is demonic. I believe there are complicated spirit. I have one very complicated spirit, Klaus. He's connected to one of my dolls. He's an exceptionally complicated spirit, but he's not negative.
We find there's people with, the spirit that have not crossed over and that have attached to dolls. They could have disabilities. They could have mental
issues.
They
could just be cranky.
It could be cranky. It could be angry. Could be frustrated.
Yeah.
For all sorts of reasons.
I don't believe in demonic dolls. To me, it makes no sense. I believe that if something is negative, it's human, and it's something that has happened in that spirit's life, and that spirit needs to help work through that and heal. I don't believe spirit deliberately go out to harm people. I think that some spirit are assholes. Some spirits are bully boys. Some spirits like to get their own way. But that spirit is caught within the time frame of the time when they passed. So
generally they're human.
Yeah.
And basically, if you can communicate with that spirit that's attached to the doll and find out why they're cranky, find out why they're angry, you can basically do a little bit of counselling to them. You can bring some sort of a balance, and eventually, as with all dolls, spirits that are connected to the doll in their own time, they will cross over. You can't force them to cross over.
No. I've had spirit connected to my dolls. They've crossed over and they've come back. There's quite a few of them that have gone to the light. They've done what they had to do, and they're coming back. They come back because they class this as their home. It's a safe place. They may still have the connection to the doll. They know the doll's here, but they consider this a safe place. For me, I see a lot of ads for dolls, and you know, the doll has made them feel ill, made them given them a headache, made them feel nauseated. The doll's moved something. The doll's moved itself. My dolls move all the time. I've got a shelf full of 1950s English hard plastic dolls, and they all shuffle around on the shelf. They're all looking one way one minute, you walk into the room next to them and they're looking the other way. They're allowed to move. It's theirs. The spirit is connected to the doll is allowed to move. They're allowed to move that object because it belongs to them.
They're not actually, it's important to note too that they're not actually inside the doll.
No, they're connected to it.
They're connected to it. They're
it's
outside
like a
the
bungee
doll.
cord.
They're outside the doll, so they move freely around the house.
And the doll itself is allowed to move, and sometimes they move it to get your attention. You know, I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning the other day, and BB's head spun round and looked at me.
BB's.
She likes to scare
BB's
people.
An interesting one.
But they're allowed to move the object.
A lot of reborn scammers, a lot of doll scammers, and a lot of spiritual doll scammers around.
Yeah.
How do you what do? You just try to talk to them first before you buy and try to find out whether they're rigid or not?
If what they're giving you, if it has a bio and it's too good to be true, it is. If the bio says, you know, this is Catherine, she's a 4-year-old, she died in a house fire, she was murdered, she was drowned by her mother, she was killed by a serial killer, she was, you know, there's all these, you can pretty much bank on it that it's either, the doll was either found in the basement of an asylum, that's always a good one, it was either found in an abandoned building, it was used in witchcraft, that's always it. It was used in dark rituals, that's also a good one. The doll belonged to my grandmother's aunts, brothers, cousins, sisters, grandmother, twice removed, and it makes them feel weird. I've got one doll that I bought on eBay, and the young girl I bought it from, her grandmother left it to her, and she said to me, I don't know whether this matters, but the doll does weird things. It constantly cries. We can always hear a baby crying. And I said, that's fine. And when I got that doll, I realized that there was a baby connected to it, and it was very, very distressed. But it was scaring the girl. She didn't want to give the doll to anybody. She wanted to make sure it went somewhere safe because it was her grandmother's, but it was freaking the crap out of her.
Yeah, but we find that the sellers too, they're quite happy for their dolls to come our way because the sellers feel that they will be cared for, and that's a big thing too.
I've got a friend who I've got 2 friends, and one's in the UK and one's in the US, and they sell dolls. They're both mediums. They both only sell the doll for the price of the vessel. So the doll is usually worth between, you know, $20 to $40. They only sell that plus postage. If you've got someone selling you a haunted doll for $300 and it's a doll that would probably only retail for 20 or 30 bucks, then there is something not quite right with either what the intent behind the seller or what the seller's doing. I don't sell my dolls on. Anybody who's been on my page, they know that I don't sell my dolls on.
Because basically we feel that if we were going to sell a doll on that is spirit connected, we ask the spirit if they want to move on.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to move on, there's no way we're going to sell them.
I've only ever given one of my dolls to somebody, and that was a dear friend, and we had a falling out, and the doll eventually came back. But I regret doing that because the damage that was done to that little spirit, he is still trying to get through. It's, for me, my dolls choose me. The spirits are connected to the dolls, choose me. I don't choose them. And so if they choose me, then they have a right to be here.
The last thing I want to talk about too is that what gets on our goat is you've got people who want to try and buy spirited dolls just to do investigations on them.
Oh, that's my pet peeve.
It's a pet peeve of ours.
I had a massive rant about this in the car the other day.
Because it's almost like, to us, it's almost like slave trading, because we believe spirit are people too, and if a spirit is connected to a doll and it's been traded left, right and centre, can you imagine how that spirit feels? Can you imagine that if they kept being shuffled from post to post, how angry they would be? And that anger can actually build up an energy in that spirit, and that spirit may start trashing the place, you know, throwing things around and banging on walls and carrying on and causing quite a pink fit. And it's basically because that person, that spirit, is a human. And how would you like being traded or slave traded around? It's a very big pet hate of ours.
It was really big during the pandemic for because paranormal groups couldn't go out. It was very big during the pandemic to have them buy spirited items to investigate. I've got a number of items that are spirited that aren't dolls. I've got a book that has the spirit of a cat connected to it. I've got a fortune-telling teacup that has the spirit of the previous owner, who happened to be a clairvoyant. I've got a oxbone dagger that I use in cord cuttings that's got the spirit of a Japanese warrior attached to it. I've got the sewing box I use to keep my stuff in to do all the restorations belonged to an old tailor, and he's connected to the box. It's been during the pandemic, I got that many messages from groups and from people who would see my posts and see the dolls flashing cat balls, or doing playing with K2s, or answering questions with pendulums, whatever it is. And they would send me a message and say, oh, that doll that you have, that one that was, the baby doll, or the one with the three faces, because I've got a three-face doll, or, that one, how much do you want for it? How much do you want for it? I'll give you a stupid amount of money, X, Y. And I've been offered stupid amounts of money for my dolls, because, I'm putting together a haunted museum, or I'm putting together it's usually a haunted museum. There's a lot of people putting together haunted museums. Or I run a paranormal group, and your doll would be really good for us to investigate, and I'm like, no. We're going?
Yep, we're going.
Good. Spiritual technical hitch.
Yes, the camera just shut off, so we had to rethink the last little bit.
Yeah. I have a spirit, her name's Evie, and I think that's why the camera shut off. Evie was institutionalized she's the spirit of a girl between 18 and 25, but she has mental health issues, and she was institutionalized in an asylum. The doll has three faces. It has a happy face, a sad face, and a sleeping face. And she's one of probably a handful of my dolls that can affect the living. She affects the emotions of the living. She can influence the emotions of the living depending on what face she has at the front. She prefers her happy face, and so do we, because she's a lovely, happy, bubbly sort of soul. Her sad face is absolutely tragic, and it has brought people to tears. And her sleeping face gives people a really unsettling feeling, because they feel she's a little bit too peaceful. Like I said before, she's had an unnecessary operation. I've got to be careful, because there's one thing that Evie doesn't like, is when you use the word that I used previously, which is why the camera shut off. She was given an unnecessary operation to remove part of her brain to change the way she dealt with her emotions, which was common practice in many mental asylums, including Arrowdale, the one not far from where we are. She's blind in one eye. When she arrived, she was non-verbal. She would scream, she would moan, she would shake, she would stomp on the floor, she would make the room shake. But she's not negative. And I had someone offer me a rather large amount of money for Evie because she did all of those things. So they could put her on display for everybody to come and see if they got anything from her. And for me, that's cruel. I treat my dolls like people. They find me, like I said, I don't find them. They choose me. They choose. That my dolls choose to be here, which is for me, that's my ethics. I don't sell them on. I've got one doll that stays with a friend of mine because the spirit connected to that one is very fond of her teenage daughter and looks after her. So the doll goes there. But the doll's on loan and they know that. There's been a lot of paranormal groups during the pandemic, like I said, who have been going into haunted objects and buying haunted objects. Mainly just to see if there's anything in it. And for me, that's not the best intent to have, because you find what you're looking for. And a lot of people have this notion that haunted objects or spirited objects are negative. If you seek the negative will find you. That's what my guides always said. You seek and you shall find, because you will. If you're looking for something negative, if you're looking for something that'll, bang and crash and throw things, and, you'll find that. And you can either take that at face value, or you can look deeper and see why that spirit is doing that. And a lot of the time it's not because it's demonic. It's not because it's negative. It's not because it's trying to hurt or harm you. It's trying to get your attention. It's trying to work through its own issues from life.
The way we work is we have a deep belief that spirit are people too, and we treat spirit like we would a person. And if you treat spirit like you do a person, you're going to get good interactions. You're not going to get the negative interactions.
If you're looking for good interactions, you'll get them. I've had some beautiful interactions with my dolly spirit. I've been up at 3 o'clock in the morning, moaning and groaning in pain, and they've flashed their cat balls to show that I'm not on my own. They've distracted me from the pain. I've had conversations with them. I've had ones that have wanted to move from where they are to sit on the lounge with me. Liza at the moment is sitting on the lounge with me because she knows that I'm not doing well.
So if you're actually looking for spirited dolls and all that, we wish you really well. Put your heart into it, put the positive vibe out there. And when you are looking, go with your feelings, go with your sensations. There's some great dolls out there, and a lot of them are spirited, and if you're after a spirited doll, we wish you well. But be careful of the sellers, of course. Quiz the sellers.
Yeah.
Suss out the sellers.
Ask questions.
Ask questions. Try and figure out if they're for real or not. But mostly, what do you feel from the doll that you're going to buy?
And
trust those feelings.
Just because the doll gives you chills or a headache or nausea or makes you dizzy, don't take that as negative.
That could be the last feeling that they felt before that spirit passed.
This little guy, he arrived this morning, and when he arrived, I could not work out what the spirit was. I couldn't work out. I picked him up and he didn't feel human. And I picked him up, and the first thing he did was turn his head into the crook of my arm and just want to be cuddled. I walked in to show Rick because he was in another room, and I'm saying to Rick, I can't put my finger on what's going on with this one. He doesn't feel human, but he does. And Rick made the comment, he's a spirit, who had a deformity, and he was treated badly because of that deformity. When I walked out of the room, I sat with him for a bit longer. It usually takes me a day or two to get the whole story. I sat with him for a little while longer, and I heard a quote from a very old movie starring David Bowie. And the quote was, "I'm not an animal." And it was from The Elephant Man. The reason he didn't feel human was because he wasn't treated that way. He was treated like a monster.
And now the beautiful thing is that he's with a family who will treat him like a person.
Yeah. I changed his clothes. I gave him a bit of dignity because the jumpsuit he was wearing he wasn't happy with. And I'd already ordered this little outfit when I bought him. I put the bandana on his head because he's very self-conscious about how he looks. The other thing I heard was a bunch of kids that were chanting "freak." So nobody was kind to him. His energy didn't feel human because he didn't.
Alright, so now he's in a home that's very much loved.
And he looks happier.
And he looks a lot happier just in the day that we've had him, you know, the course of today. Alright, we're going to end the video here. We hope you've enjoyed the video, and we just wish everybody to stay safe, and if you are looking at haunted dolls or spirited dolls, we don't like the word haunted dolls, but if you're looking at spirited dolls, treat them like people, and we hope you find something that's really good.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask us. Alright, thanks for watching. I know it's a long vid, but we hope you've enjoyed it. Okay, cheers for now.
Bye.
Hey, Beth has a Dolly Spirit page on Facebook, so you can also ask questions there.
Yeah. It's called Dolly Spirit, and I think it's Facebook at, I think it's the Haunted Dolly Corner. But if you put Dolly Spirit in, Rick will put a link in the comments, I guess. I don't know how that works.
No worries, I'll fix that. Alright, cheers for now.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.